Now the BBC News at 1 with Ben Brown.
Today at 1, a passenger plane in Japan is engulfed in flames. Astonishingly, all 379 people on board this Airbus managed to get off it safely. But 5 people died on the smaller Coast Guard aircraft it's thought to have collided with at Tokyo Airport. Well, that Coast Guard plane had been involved in relief operations after yesterday's earthquake in Japan, which has killed at least 48 people. We'll be live with our correspondent in Tokyo, also this lunchtime. After head teacher Ruth Perry took her own life last year, the new head of Ofsted says schools should be inspected with far more empathy.
And I'm here in the Vale of Glamorgan, South Wales, as the first storm of 2024 brings with it weather warnings across much of Wales and England.
She's back.
The return of Emma Raducanu after 8 months out through injury. And music to the ears of prisoners in Glasgow, how hip-hop is being used to rehabilitate inmates.
On BBC London, police investigating after a boy was stabbed and killed on New Year's Eve just before midnight, appeal for anyone with information or footage to come forward.
Hello, good afternoon. Hundreds of passengers and crew have had a remarkable escape from a plane that burst into flames in Japan. It's thought to have collided with a smaller Coast Guard aircraft in which 5 people were killed. Dramatic footage from Tokyo's Haneda Airport showed the passenger jet, an Airbus 350, engulfed in fire on the runway and its fuselage collapsing as emergency crews try to put out the flames. Matt Graveling has the latest.
A fireball engulfs the runway at Japan's Haneda Airport. An Airbus coming into land collides with a Coast Guard plane. Tragically, 5 people on the smaller aircraft are killed. Japan Airlines Flight 516 remained ablaze as it continued down the runway, with 379 people on board. Inside, passengers watched as sparks flew past their windows. As the pilot brought the plane to a stop, everyone was safely evacuated.
I just came here to pick up a friend. It was pretty scary. Like the whole airport just froze. The people that were boarding planes all had to get off. Planes just completely stopped everywhere. And yeah, it's kind of crazy.
All runways were immediately closed. More than 70 fire engines tried to contain the blaze, which quickly spread through the whole body of the aircraft.
It looks like the structure has done what it's designed to do, which is to protect the occupants and allow a fast evacuation. Of course, the fire service focus will absolutely have been on protecting the exits, making sure there was a clear path for people to evacuate from the aircraft.
The Airbus landed at 5:45 p.m. local time, having made a short journey from northern Japan. One person is believed to have escaped from the Coast Guard plane, which was on its way to the west of the country to deliver aid to a region that was hit hard by an earthquake yesterday, which claimed the lives of 48 people. The Japanese Prime Minister said he wants officials to act quickly to ascertain the damage and provide information to the public. Matt Graveling, BBC News.
So, as you heard there, the Coast Guard plane involved in that apparent collision was on a mission to deliver aid supplies after the earthquake yesterday, in which at least 48 people are now known to have died. Japan's Prime Minister has said rescue teams are facing a race against time to find survivors of the earthquake trapped beneath the rubble. Now, the quake, with a magnitude of 7.6, hit the province of Noto in Japan, and our correspondent Jean McKenzie reports from there, close to the epicentre of the earthquake.
This is a race for survival. Rescue workers stream through Japan's isolated Noto Peninsula, the roads blocking their way. They're trying to reach these worst affected areas in the north, where people are trapped under their collapsed homes. Many families were out at temples celebrating New Year's Day when Japan was hit by its strongest earthquake in 12 years. Mimura-san thought his shrine was going to collapse. The whole gate was swaying. The alleyway was swaying too. The children had to squat on the floor so as not to fall over, he told me. As we travel towards the epicenter, we're alerted to another earthquake. These aftershocks keep coming. Further in, old wooden homes have been brought to the ground, not made to withstand the ferocity of Japan's enduring quakes. Toshio Iwahama lives here alone after losing his wife. At 82, he doesn't know how he'll manage the repairs.
We always have earthquakes around here, but I just didn't think we get big one like this. I didn't take it seriously. I thought we were safe here.
This is only the tip of the destruction.
We are trying to get closer to the epicenter, to a city where we know that at least a dozen people have died and many more are trapped in their homes that have collapsed. But we are struggling because if you look at this road here, it is completely ruptured, and this is what we keep coming up against, these roads that are totally blocked off. And even these emergency services here, these rescue teams, have been struggling to reach people in these worst affected areas. So we are still trying to piece together the extent of the damage and how many people have been killed and injured.
Some firefighters have managed to get into the wrecked city of Wajima and are searching for survivors, but the death toll is expected to rise. The people here have lived through many an earthquake, but never felt tremors of this magnitude, which have shaken both their surroundings and their sense of safety. G. Mackenzie, BBC News, in Noto Peninsula in Japan.
Well, let's go back now to Tokyo and that apparent collision of two aircraft at Tokyo Airport. Our correspondent Suranjana Tawari is there for us now. And as we saw there, Japan already coping with the effects of that terrible earthquake, and now another tragedy where you are, which actually could have been so much worse. I think we've lost our live link there with Suranjana, but we'll try to go back to Tokyo a little bit later on. Here, the government says it has met a promise by the Prime Minister to clear a large part of the backlog of asylum claims. According to the Home Office, more than 112,000 asylum cases were processed by officials last year. But Labour says the government has been manipulating the figures. Here's our Home editor, Mark Easton.
With the Home Office spending millions of pounds a day on hotel rooms for record numbers of asylum seekers stuck in its system, Rishi Sunak made a promise to Parliament and the British people a little over 12 months ago.
To abolish the backlog of initial asylum decisions by the end of next year.
With feelings running high over the use of hotels, the government threw people and money at unblocking the process and keeping the Prime Minister's pledge, doubling the number of caseworkers and streamlining the system.
So, has it worked? Well, the government says the promise only applies to what it calls the legacy backlog. Those are cases stuck for more than 18 months, and that bit of the backlog, well, it has fallen from around 100,000 cases down to, well, not zero. 4,500 are still in the system, but they've been reclassified as complex. And while the focus has been on the legacy, another backlog has been growing. New cases now in the system number more than 94,000, which means the total backlog is 98,500, a higher number than the one the PM promised to reduce to zero.
Good morning to you, Mr. Cleverly.
Today, the Home Secretary claimed the promise had been kept, even though thousands of legacy cases remain unresolved.
They've all been through that processing. They've all been dealt with in terms of getting through that, as I say, that initial adjudicating process. That's what we meant by addressing the backlog. We have done that. We've completed that.
Rishi Sunak's claim to have cleared the asylum backlog is just totally false. In fact, the figures are nearly 100,000 cases, and they haven't even fully cleared the bit of the backlog they were targeting.
With the number of small boats arriving down by more than a third last year compared with 2022 and a much improved processing rate for asylum cases, the government is claiming progress on immigration control. But there will be a fierce debate as to whether today marks a pledge delivered or a promise broken. Mark Easton, BBC News.
Let's get some more analysis of those figures from our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman, who joins me now. And Henry, I guess we're going to be hearing much more about the whole issue of asylum and immigration in general in what is almost certain to be an election year.
It's a new political year, Ben, but a fairly familiar set of arguments. We know that it's almost certain, as you say, that 2024 will be a general election year. It's absolutely certain that whenever that general election comes, asylum, immigration are going to be some of the big campaign grounds that you hear both major parties and all the other parties arguing about. And small boats, asylums, become a totemic issue for the Conservatives. You speak to MPs, party strategists in Westminster from all wings of the Conservative Party, really. They all believe that being seen to deal with this issue is crucial to overcoming that electoral mountain that they seem to be trying to scale. And what I think the government is trying to demonstrate today is that things are moving in the right direction. That is not an argument that the Labour Party wants them to be able to get away with. They point to the 4,000 or so claims from that legacy backlog, which still haven't had a decision made, and also question whether there are several thousand more where people have basically just absconded, entered the underground economy. And I think what you have there is Labour trying to nudge the issue onto more general issues of the government's competence. They point to the number of asylum claims having trebled since the Conservatives entered government in 2010. And that, I think, questions of whether the government has a grip of not just this, but other issues is going to be the core of that election campaign.
Henry, thank you very much. Henry Zeffman there, our chief political correspondent. A man has appeared in court charged with the murder of a 46-year-old father of two in Sheffield. Chris Marriott was hit by a car while trying to help a stranger. Hassan Jangur, who's 23 years old, was remanded in custody. Our reporter Yunus Muller is outside Sheffield Crown Court for us now.
Well, Hassan Jangur, who's from Whiteways Road in Sheffield, appeared by video link and during a short hearing spoke only to confirm his name and that he understood that a trial was to take place. He's charged with 1 count of murder and 5 of attempted murder following an incident last week. Now, Chris Marriott had stopped with a number of people to help a woman who was lying unconscious in the road. He was hit by a car. A woman was taken to hospital with injuries. The 46-year-old was well known in the city. He was involved in a debt counselling charity and also food banks. In a statement, his family said he was a wonderful husband, father, brother, uncle and a friend to many. Now, after this appearance here today, Hassan Jangur will next appear before the same court in March for a plea hearing. Richard Davis, representing him, said that he intends to plead not guilty to those charges. He was remanded into custody and a trial date was set for July.
OK, Yunus, thank you very much. Yunus Muller there at Sheffield Crown Court. Officials in Ukraine say 4 people have been killed and dozens injured in a heavy Russian missile bombardment of the capital Kyiv and the northeastern city of Kharkiv. The missiles hit residential buildings and civilian infrastructure and left around 250,000 people without electricity in Kyiv and the surrounding region. The attacks came less than 24 hours after the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, said Moscow would intensify strikes on Ukraine. Both Aldi and Little have reported record Christmas sales as shoppers look to cut costs over the festive period. Aldi said its sales topped £1.5 billion for the first time in the 4 weeks to Christmas Eve. And Lidl claimed it had its best Christmas since it opened in the UK in 1994. Much of England and Wales is being hit by heavy rain as Storm Henk sweeps in today, with a few areas buffeted by winds of up to 80 miles an hour. The Met Office has issued an amber weather warning for travel disruption, for roof damage and possible power cuts across southern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and Wales until 8 o'clock this evening. Well, our correspondent Thomas Morgan is in the Vale of Glamorgan. What's the picture there, Thomas?
Well, as you can see behind me, this road is closed here, and just over there, you might be able to see on my right shoulder, a field flooded. And the locals here, they say, well, sometimes this road does flood when the weather does get bad, but never to this extent, really. We've had such a wet, festive period here in Wales and much of the UK, really, that the roads and the fields haven't been able to drain at all. And now this storm has come and just made things work. And this is just a small example of the travel disruption that's been caused by Storm Henk. The train line between London and West Wales on a number of points have caused issues. Parts have been closed. There are a number of homes in West Wales that have had to be evacuated due to flooding there. And as you mentioned there, the wind as well is causing an issue. Gusts have predicted up to 80 miles an hour along the coastlines across Devon, Cornwall and parts of Wales earlier this morning. That'll move on as the day goes on, really. But it's only kind of the second day of the year, of course. This wet storm has already come, but last year we only had 2 named storms. We've had 8 already since the new season started in September. So it's fair to say that 2024 would possibly be one of the wettest yet.
OK, Thomas, thank you very much. Thomas Morgan reporting there. And the time is just 16 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. Hundreds of people have escaped this fire on a passenger jet at Tokyo's main airport, but 5 people were killed in the Coast Guard aircraft that it is thought to have collided with. And coming up, the colossal fossil of a sea monster that lived 150 million years ago goes on display.
And at 1:30, the East London borough with one of the highest birth rates in the UK, and why that's putting pressure on nurseries and council finances. Plus, the big project underway as one of London's best-known venues marks 150 years.
Last month, an inquest found that an Ofsted school inspection had contributed to the death of head teacher Ruth Perry, who took her own life. Well, her family have called for root and branch reforms. Now, the new chief inspector of Ofsted says the inspection process needs to be far more empathetic. In his first interview since taking charge of Ofsted, Sir Martin Oliver said lessons have to be learned. Here's our education editor, Branwyn Jeffries.
His job matters for children and parents. The new boss at Ofsted will oversee inspections, including schools. Schools facing the challenges left by the COVID lockdowns.
It's a difficult job Ofsted has to do, because ultimately we also have to be about high standards. But I think we can do that in a way which is far more empathetic.
An Ofsted inspection at this primary contributed to the suicide of head teacher Ruth Perry. The coroner has warned more lives are at risk without changes.
I'm determined that we shall learn those lessons.
Do you think the tone of Ofsted's response to Ruth Perry's death was correct?
Well, I don't think it went further enough, and I'm quite clear on that. There's clearly been a lot of criticism, and we must accept that criticism if we're in order to have a fresh start and move on.
So what do you want to do now that you're taking over Ofsted?
So he told me mental health training for inspectors is a top priority before any routine inspections restart later in January. But he also wants to listen to parents. At a soft play centre in Huddersfield, a group of mums meet regularly. Most use Ofsted as part of choosing schools.
Ofsted is a good thing in that it helps people give a measure of a school, it helps find out problems with a school.
My opinion's probably changed because I think at the end of the day their school experience is based on the teachers and the other pupils rather than any reports or any outcomes.
Today, head teachers' unions welcomed the more open tone from Ofsted, but said ministers should scrap 1- or 2-word judgments of schools.
A single word judgment can be applied to 2 schools in very, very different positions, so they don't really work. So we're going to have to modify that. But the government uses those single word judgments right now to determine whether it should intervene in schools or not. So we would have to find another way, but I'm sure we can do that.
Ofsted needs to rebuild trust with schools and head teachers and some of its credibility. And that's important because parents rely on Ofsted.
He's got a tough reputation, but some change can only be made by government. Bronwyn Jeffries, BBC News.
From today, working parents in England can apply for more help with their childcare costs. At the moment, government support is only available for children over the age of 3, but from April, eligible 2-year-olds will receive 15 hours of free childcare a week during term time. But some daycare providers are worried that they simply won't have the resources to cope with what is expected to be increased demand. Here's our education reporter, Vanessa Clark.
Sisters Jill and Lindsay know all too well how expensive childcare can be. But in just a few months, their bills will go down for their youngest children.
It'll really help, really help. It makes such a difference, and I'm really glad that they've actually done something, and we are eligible for something.
I stopped working 5 years ago after my second child was born, just to avoid the child costs. So I go back to work in January, so I will pay between January and April, and then in April, obviously, with the 15 hours free, that'll make a big difference for us.
Working parents here in Marple and across England can now apply to the government for the first phase of what will be a major expansion in funded hours. From April, 15 hours will be available for 2-year-olds during term time. But with demand for places rising, are nurseries and childminders ready?
People want to expand. People want to, provide more childcare places, but unfortunately they haven't got the staff. And without qualified and unqualified staff ready to actually come into the sector, that is not going to be possible for them to deliver this policy.
At Kids Zone in Greater Manchester, calls from eager parents have been coming in for months. But here there are concerns about the amount that will be paid for the funded hours.
Inflation's like up here and the rates down here. So we've got a big gap on the rates for what we're actually going to be receiving. So no, I would say it's not enough for us to be able to maintain the quality that we need to maintain.
The government is confident this rollout will be a success.
What we're doing is working closely on a monthly basis with local authorities to make sure that each local authority has the number of places it needs to be able to deliver this new offer. Parents from today can apply for the first 15 hours for their 2-year-olds, and we're supporting local authorities to make sure they've got the money and the people needed to be able to give this to parents.
There are 3 months to go before the rollout begins. A help for many working parents, but a real challenge for an already stretched sector. Vanessa Clark, BBC News.
The Spanish footballer Jenny Hermoso has been testifying before a judge in Madrid about the behaviour of Luis Rubiales, the former president of Spain's Football Federation, who had to resign after kissing her on the lips following the Women's World Cup final last summer. Mr Rubiales faces a possible trial for sexual assault. Well, our Spain correspondent Guy Hedgecoe is in Madrid for us right now. Guy, just bring us up to date on what's been happening there.
Well, today's hearing focused on an alleged sexual assault that was witnessed by millions of people around the world. Now, Jenny Hermoso, the player at the centre of all of this, told the judge in the National Court here in central Madrid today that the kiss that Luis Rubiales gave her after the World Cup final back in August in Sydney was not consensual, that she didn't agree to it. Now, of course, Mr Rubiales contests that. He says that the kiss was consensual, that they both agreed to it. It was a spontaneous moment, according to him. But the judge investigating this now has the task of deciding if there's enough evidence against Mr Rubiales for him to go on trial for sexual assault. Now, this case has already had a huge impact here in Spain, certainly in the football world, where it led to the resignation of Mr Rubiales and also the replacement of many people at the top of the Football Federation. So there was a huge shake-up there. But also it was seen as having a broader impact across Spanish society. It triggered a social movement against perceived sexism in many other areas of Spanish life.
Guy, thank you. Guy Hedgecoe reporting there from Madrid. Birmingham City have sacked Wayne Rooney after just 83 days in charge of the Championship club. It follows a 3-0 defeat at Leeds on Monday, which was the former England captain's 9th defeat in 15 games. The Blues currently sit 20th in the table, just above the relegation zone. And in tennis, Britain's Emma Raducanu has won on her return to the game after 8 months out with injury. The former US Open champion, who's on the comeback trail after surgery on both hands and her left ankle in May, won her first round match at the Auckland Classic, as Katie Gornall now reports.
It's been 259 days since Emma Raducanu last walked out to play a competitive match. For her, this felt like a fresh start. The past 8 months have been tough for the former US Open champion. 3 surgeries on both her wrists and ankle left her needing a wheelchair. As she recovered, her ranking tumbled to 301 in the world. So how would she hold up in Auckland? Well, the early signs were encouraging against Romania's Elena Gabriela Rusa. She took the first set 6-3. Rusa would fight back to level the match, but Raducanu showed grit, grace and glimpses of her best.
Oh, yes. How about that from Raducanu?
The 21-year-old claimed to feel reborn coming into this match, free from the burden of her US Open win. Still, there was understandably some rustiness. 2 match points came and went before she finally clinched it.
She's back.
The tougher test of second seed Elena Svitolina awaits, but first Raducanu will want to savour this. That winning feeling has been a long time coming. Katie Gornall, BBC News.
Now, what is the best way to rehabilitate prisoners? Well, a new scheme has been launched at Barlinnie Jail in Glasgow, where inmates are being offered hip-hop workshops while still behind bars, and the chance to record their own rap music. Our entertainment correspondent Colin Patterson has been to meet some of those taking part.
Hate these streets, but at the same time I love these streets.
The sound of hip-hop made in Barlinnie, Scotland's largest prison, which once held the Lockerbie bomber. For the first time, there have been workshops to encourage the prisoners to rap.
This is B Hall, where 279 prisoners are held, a mixture of those who've been convicted and those who are on remand. We're going to go up to the 2nd level and meet Bernie in his cell.
This is Bernie's track, which is playing. He's 32 and from Govan in Glasgow, and ended up in Barlinnie on Boxing Day just over a year ago.
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Colin.
Colin, I'm Bernie.
Bernie, this is your cell?
Aye.
How many hours a day you been spending here?
Well, normally it would be 23 hours a day.
I remember the day you were born, the moment you came out the womb.
Now these hip-hop classes are providing him with an outlet.
Like, people obviously want to see people get punished, do you know what I mean? But we are getting punished, you know what I mean? When we're in our cells, we're already living in a prison in our head.
What do these workshops do for you?
It's definitely important. It's helped me get back to my normal cell and better. I'm trying to be a better version I've ever been, do you know what I mean? So it's definitely been a positive experience for me.
Come on, come on, come on.
Musician Becky Wallace has been running the sessions, which have been funded by Creative Scotland.
My hope is, for some of the guys at least, that it might be the first chance they've had to be vulnerable in a safe space.
There are some people at home thinking, why on earth are people being given the chance to make music when they're in prison?
If they are continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again and coming back in here, then why not try something new?
I'm living my life and it's time to move on.
And one of the prisoners willing to try something new is Robert.
Usually when I've got out of prison, I've not really had nothing to focus on, and it's something I'm got to follow up on when I'm out, do you know what I mean? It's gave me a chance.
Stop you reoffending?
Aye, 100%, aye.
The finale of the course was a small showcase where their tracks were played in front of other prisoners and guards.
I'm changing my life for the better now. I've got high hopes, you know what I mean? I've got to be alright.
I just want to be free, This time in prison I've turned into a positive.
And the workshops will be back in 2024 with a difference. After hip-hop, next time it will be the turn of folk music. Colin Patterson, BBC News, Barlinnie, Glasgow.
Now, from today, you can see for yourself the skull of a colossal sea monster unearthed from the Jurassic coast, which goes on display in Dorset. The giant fossil belongs to this, a pliosaur. Now, these are generated images of it, one of the most fearsome predators ever to have existed. Our science editor, Rebecca Morrell, has been taking a closer look at its remains.
Meeting a Jurassic sea monster. A colossal fossil is unveiled to the public for the very first time. This is the skull of a pliosaur, one of the most fearsome predators the planet has ever seen.
I think the fossil is incredible. I think it would have been very terrifying, eating those little predators. It has big teeth.
This gigantic reptile lived 150 million years ago. It would have terrorised the oceans, devouring passing prey with a single bite. The fossil was found halfway down a cliff face in Dorset's Kimmeridge Bay. It took 3 weeks for a team dangling off ropes to extract it. Steve Etches led the excavation.
This is the top of the food chain. There's nothing bigger than this. So it fed on everything. It fed on its own kind. Anything it gets teeth into, it feed on.
Come and have a look in here. Inside this drawer is a tantalising glimpse of what's left to find of the pliosaur's body. We've got a few neck vertebrae, a shoulder bone, and the team is certain that the rest of the pliosaur is still in the cliffs and they want to get it out. Now, the skull is 2 metres long, so there's another 8 metres left to extract. So there may be more of this beast to come. But if it is recovered, the museum may need to build a new extension to fit it all in. Rebecca Morrell, BBC News.
Scary stuff. The weather's quite scary in parts of the country as well. Ben Richards here with the latest forecast, and we've got the first storm of the new year.
Yeah, first storm of this year, Ben. If you were hoping the change of year would bring a change in the weather, well, it hasn't, not yet. Anyway, what we've got today is Storm Henk, named by the Met Office. For many, it is bringing heavy rain in places where we do not need it. Not far off 150 flood warnings right now across various parts of the UK, but also some very strong winds, a swathe of particularly strong winds where we have this Met Office amber warning. Gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour inland. Some coasts could see gusts of 80 miles per hour, could cause some damage, certainly some travel disruption as this area of low pressure pushes its way eastwards. And it's where we have this squeeze in the isobars on the southern edge of that low that we are going to see a swathe of very strong winds. It is also, though, very windy up towards the northeast of Scotland. Gales here with some outbreaks of rain. A lot of rain across parts of England and Wales through the rest of the afternoon, hence those flooding concerns. Temperature-wise, 7 to 14 degrees, so it is mild out there, particularly down towards the south. Now, this evening and tonight, it will stay quite windy in the south and in the north of the UK. Across Shetland, we could see some snow mixing in. Outbreaks of rain elsewhere, tending to clear to a mix of clear spells and showers from the west. But some of those showers will be on the heavy side. Not a particularly cold night, frost-free for just about all of us. Tomorrow, low pressure still very much in charge. Still some strong winds down to the south and also up towards the north and the east. Lighter winds across central parts of the UK. So for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England, much of Wales, not as windy. There will be quite a few showers around. Some of those will be on the heavy side, and across Scotland, more generally cloudy conditions with some showery rain at times. Those temperatures, if anything, coming down by a degree or two, 6 to 11 degrees. Now, as we head into Thursday, low pressure still in charge. This little frontal system running in from the southwest. This is going to bring more heavy rain for some of us, particularly across southern counties of England and the Channel Islands. Elsewhere across Scotland, quite a lot of cloud, bits and pieces of rain, and elsewhere it's that story of sunshine and showers. Not as windy, though, by this stage, and those temperatures continuing that downward trend, 6 to 10 degrees. Now, if you were looking for a change in the weather, the end of the week will bring something of a change because low pressure is going to loosen its grip. High pressure tries to build from the west and also from the northeast. So that will settle things down a little bit as we head towards the weekend. But as that happens, some colder air will start to establish itself. Now, we're not expecting this to be an extreme cold spell for the time of year or anything like that. Temperatures around or perhaps below the average for the time of year. There will be some drier weather, some spells of sunshine, bit of mist and fog by night, and any showers that do crop up could be wintry. Ben.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. And that is today's BBC News at 1. You can keep up to date with all the latest developments on our BBC website. Now, though, it is time to join our colleagues for a look at the news where you are. But from me, do have a very good afternoon.